about my background, but I've also talked about, gosh, I've grown up around you, obviously, my whole life, and you've always talked about various things. Anybody that's been around you and traveling anywhere has heard you probably say, "Don't put your hands on the hand railings. Don't touch that. Don't put your hands to your face," and all of those basics. But obviously, we've lived through Y2K, and I remember you talking about preparedness, and I grew up with you as a Boy Scout, and you're an Eagle Scout, and we have many Eagle Scouts associated with us. So, I've grown up around being prepared and all of those things. I know you've written a book called Prepare. You were in the military for 19, 20 years. You were 27 years, and obviously being around zoos and zoo animals and patients and humans and human patients and things. So, things like bacteria and viruses and boosting the immune system has always been a big part of your medical practice, your background and things. So that's what we're going to talk about this morning, really, is just all these different things, from nutrients to taking care of just the basics of being prepared to protect yourself from this sort of stuff. So with that, why don't you kind of remind everybody a little bit about your background in those areas and all that you had talked about around being prepared too, because even with Y2K, it wasn't just about boosting your immune system. It was about having enough food, enough water, enough, food, ammunition, whatever, things at home to just make sure that you have everything you need. So why don't we start there?
Well, let's just take just a couple of minutes. I won't belabor this, but the thing that makes me different is that I do have a degree in agriculture. My major is in animal husbandry and nutrition. And we've eliminated thousands of diseases in livestock because we don't have health insurance for them, and to keep things affordable, eggs and meat and so forth. And we had to learn how to give all of our animals the nutrients they needed to prevent all the diseases we suffer from. I do have a degree in veterinary medicine, and both of those degrees were from the University of Missouri. I have half of my degree in pathology from the University of Missouri, 25% of it from Iowa State University, and then a grant, which Marlon Perkins, the old Mutual Omaha Wild Kingdom show, I worked for him. He used my original paper on mass die-off in America, first one, to get a $25 million grant from the National Institutes of Health to study pollution. And I was supposed to find the canary in the mine. I was supposed to find a zoo animal that died of the same pollutants we did. This was April of 1967. April of 1967. We got this $25 million grant. It was a 10-year study, did 20,000 autopsies, 17,000 some change of over 454 species of zoo animals, and 3,000 humans, looking for a species of animals in the zoos that would die from the same pollutants that humans were. Animals started dying in the zoo, we knew to evacuate the city. That was the whole purpose of the study. What I found was that no zoo animals died of pollution and no human beings died of pollution during that time. And found out there were no genetically transmitted diseases, no genetically transmitted birth defects. All birth defects are preventable. There are no genetically transmitted birth defects. That's crazy, but it's true. As a result, my thesis from that study is in the Smithsonian Institute as a national treasure. I'm very, very proud of that. It's bound and sold as a textbook by W.B. Saunders. And it was originally 5,000 pages, and they edited it down to 1,200 pages. Make a long story short, was working with Yerkes Primate Center in Atlanta, Georgia, with NASA and Emory University, working on a project in 1977, discovered the first non-human case of cystic fibrosis, did all the appropriate work, found out that it wasn't a genetically transmitted disease, a simple nutritional deficiency, which could be prevented and reversed. Even if somebody's 30 years old, they could reverse it. And they fired me saying, "Wallach, you must be sniffing glue," because everybody knows it's the example of a genetically transmitted disease. So that's when I went back to school and became a naturopathic physician, and have been licensed in Oregon and California since 1982. It was very quickly obvious to me that one person cannot communicate with enough people. So I began to do things that would leverage my time and magnify my time. So I started lecturing, and I get 300 people come to a Tuesday night lecture, and I would turn them into patients, but I didn't have enough room in my little office to see that many patients during the day. And so I began to record things. I recorded one of my lectures is called "Dead Doctors Don't Lie." It was originally a VHS tape that most people didn't have a machine, so we extracted the soundtrack off of it and made an audio cassette tape out of it. Sold over 300,000 copies of that. And when CDs came out 3 years later, million, excuse me, 300 million, not thousand, 300 million. And it's now in 9 languages, and we've sold more than that in CDs. And of course, we have the book, Dead Doctors Don't Lie. We have the book, Let's Play Doctor, okay, which tells you sort of like how you can do your own tests. You can go to a pharmacy and get your own test strips, and you can go online now. They sell them on TV for $89. Now you can get your own device, put your 2 fingers on it in 30 seconds. You have your EKG. You can use your Apple Watch and do your pulse and your blood pressure and all that kind of stuff. So you really don't need to go to a doctor to monitor yourself on a regular basis. And the human book that followed my 20,000 autopsies was this one. This epigenetics represents 8,000 human autopsies. And it shows very clearly that there are no genetically transmitted disease. And another guy by the name of Bruce Lipton, like Lipton Tea, he and I are both of us considered the father of the science of epigenetics, which has replaced genetics. And of course, through longevity and Steve and our entire team's efforts and Dr. Milan, so many of our distributors, I don't want to name any one, I don't think, because there's so many thousands that have been involved in making this happen. But we do have pre-packaged programs. We have our basic program, our core program we call the Healthy Start Pack, which has all 90 essential nutrients that all vertebrates require to meet their needs for maintaining themselves and repairing themselves and fending off disease and so forth. And then we have what we call secret sauces for over 900 different diseases. So you don't have to be a doctor or go to medical school for 8 years. What would you use for various diseases? We have various, as I say, secret sauces to add to the basic program. You give your stem cells all over your body everything they need to maintain, repair yourself. You can maximize your healthy lifespan. That's sort of the fast version of it.
Turned a 3-hour lecture into 5 minutes. That's great. So, and I think that's really important for people to understand that something I like to remind people about, and again, learning from you, is that healthy is normal. So to be normal, the body is always trying to go back to what's called homeostasis, which is a normal operating state, and being healthy is normal. It should be. And so your body is a healing machine. And so you say this all the time, that giving your body the raw materials and not stepping on the landmines, not accidentally, causing yourself harm, are the important things. So giving your body the raw materials, and that's where the Healthy Body Pack comes in, because it's got the 90 essential nutrients plus about another 100 beneficial ingredients as well. And so that comes from your lifetime of research, and it covers so many systems in the body. I mean, calcium alone interacts with like 300 different systems in the body to keep the body healthy. And so, that's if I like the analogy that the Healthy Body Pack is kind of the center of the sunflower, and all the different programs and different products and formulations are maybe a petal that interact with the center of the sunflower. So the Healthy Body Pack is definitely among our top most popular products, because it's covers so many things in it. And it's basically, if you're alive, you need the Healthy Body Pack, whether you're a child or an adult, right? And so that's the basic. Speaking of that, how old are you now?
Well,
people don't believe when I tell them how old you are.
Okay. If you look at me from the standpoint of blood
chronological age.
Oh, chronologically, okay. Chronologically, I'm 80.
80, okay.
But if you look at me,
well, that's an important fact too. A point that there's biological age and there's chronological age.
Biologically, I'm about 45 years of age.
Well, now you're making me feel old.
My blood pressure, and I'm on no medication. I have never been sick. I've had several injuries because I'm very active. I had several injuries, which I'm now recovering from my latest injury, which I was up in Toronto, Canada, and fell in a sinkhole on a construction site in the middle of the night after giving a lecture. They were tearing up parking lots with pressure hoses and created a sinkhole.
Well, I was with you in Indiana one time when you stepped in a storm drain and broke your shin and got up and walked to do the meeting that you had planned anyway.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, you're like a Energizer bunny for sure.
And so,
And so,
okay. And so, yeah, my blood pressure runs 61/40, and my pulse, my pulse is 40.
was it true that you had a bone density scan done not too long ago?
Yeah, I had a bone density scan done. And when I fell in that sinkhole, I was in the emergency room. They did a bone density scan, and because I couldn't believe that I didn't fracture something, and I did puncture my foot, my left foot, and got an infection in there, which we got rid of. They wanted to amputate my foot, so I just said no, and took nutrients.
So how did the bone scan go?
Oh, the bone scan. Oh, I have the bone density of a healthy 18-year-old male.
Well, it's not a surprise to me, but I know that's surprising to a lot of people.
It was
That
a
goes
shock
to
to the
the,
doctors in the emergency room.
I'm sure it was, and that goes to the biological age, right? It's all of these things that you really have
The
a
stem
physical
cells.
body of like a 45-year-old, like you said.
Yeah, you give your stem cells the raw materials they need. And there's a professor of physiology at the medical school, the University of London, England. And he says there's people who are alive today will be alive 1,000 years from now if they continue to do everything right, because their stem cells have the capacity to repair and replace cells that die of natural death and reach into their time. And if you give your stem cells what they need, there's a stem cell for every tissue, every cell in the body. Okay, for every stem cell type, there is. It will take care of the normal categories of cells in your body. So you have to give them the material. When somebody tells you, "Oh, just eat well, you get everything you need," that would be like saying, "Don't put oil in your car; that's too expensive, and the environment and everything. Just put dirt from Texas or Oklahoma, and there's bound to be some oil." And an insane person would not do that to their car. When a doctor says, "Oh, just eat well, you get everything you need," well, my doctor said I can eat well, get everything I need. Well, the average lifespan for medical doctors is 57. So why would you want to listen to them?
So I remember you lecturing, and you probably still talk about this, the biodome, and people being genetically able to and programmed to live to be beyond 120, beyond 150, maybe even beyond 200. And I know that even Time Magazine started promoting pictures of babies, saying this baby could live to be 150 and beyond. And so I definitely saw that as vindication for what you were talking about, because people thought, gosh, here's crazy Dr. Wallach talking about people living beyond 120, beyond 150.
One of the greatest modern stories of age was James Hilton, an investigative reporter for the New York Times. And there's a guy in China, Dr. Chi, who was said to be 256 years of age. And he was running around treating people. He was out visiting, doing home visits and everything, treating people at 256 years of age. And he died, I think, at 263. And so the New York Times said, there's no way. So they sent their most vicious, most aggressive New York Times investigative reporter to China to visit with this guy. And he followed him for a year. Traced back all the writings and when he was in school and everything like that. And he said, this guy is 256 years old. And he came up with a book. It's called Lost Horizon. Mm-hmm. And they made a movie out of it, Hollywood movie. And so everybody needs to read that book, Lost Horizon, and watch the movie, Lost Horizon, because it's a biography of this guy. And he lived in a particular place called Hunza, where the Giltar Glacier grinds up all the rocks in the canyon walls, which have 70 some plus minerals, including all 60 known essential minerals. And these people are the longest lived people on Earth. Their average lifespan is well beyond 200. And so this is a very famous place. Hunza people is the tribe, and the Giltar Glacier, and James Hilton, and Lost Horizon. That tells you how long we can live if you do everything right. You give your stem cells what they need to maintain and repair wounded, injured, and ailing cells, whether it's pancreas or liver our heart or blood vessels or muscles or bones. Your bone marrow is very important. And most people don't realize your bone marrow next to your heart is the most important part of your cardiovascular system. People don't realize that.
Your bone marrow next to your heart.
Yeah.
Are you talking about in your chest plates and
No,
ribs and things? What are you talking about?
No, what I'm talking about is your heart is the most important piece of your cardiovascular system.
Oh, I see what
Second
you're saying.
to your heart is your bone marrow. People say, your bone marrow, how can that be important to your cardiovascular system? Well, it makes red blood cells. Your cardiovascular system produces all the red blood cells.
Right. Makes white blood cells.
Makes white blood cells. They're for your immune system, which is very important today. And it also makes platelets, so you'll bleed to death if you don't have your bone marrow. Okay.
So what do we need to do to support our bone marrow and production of white and red blood cells?
Two things. Number one, maximize absorption, right?
Okay.
And then supplement with the 90, including everything your bone marrow stem cells need to make red blood cells, white blood cells, including lymphocytes, neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils. When the alarm goes off in your body, signals are sent through the bloodstream. They get to the bone marrow. The bone marrow releases all these white blood cells, and they go and attack the viruses.
So it's the white blood cells that are the
Immune system,
the
cavalry.
protectors.
The cavalry, the Marines, send in the Marines, send in the cavalry, and it's your white blood cells. They're your cavalry when it comes to your immune system, and your cardiovascular system delivers them. Okay, to your bloodstream. Your bone marrow makes them, and also your bone marrow makes antibodies. Okay, and then of course.
Why don't we describe antibodies a little bit, because we're going to talk about some of the products a little bit later, and antibodies are an important part of how that all works, right?
Yeah, antibodies are little particles that are made primarily in your bone marrow. There are some lymphatic tissues in your thymus and so forth that also make antibodies, and your lymph nodes make antibodies. And they, again, heed this call, and they go attack particularly germs. They attack specific viruses, bacteria, fungus, yeast, parasites.
Well, antibodies also keep your body and your white blood cells, for instance, alert to foreign invaders, right? It kind of heightens the awareness, kind of tricks the immune system into staying alert for those particular invaders. And it's one of the issues that's going on right now is this new virus is new. Nobody has immunity to it because this is specific to it.
This is your chemical warfare weapon, are your antibodies, whereas your Marines are your white blood cells, your cavalry, your white blood cells. You have the cavalry, you have soldiers with guns and so forth, but you also have chemical warfare, which are your antibodies.
Okay, great. Good analogy. Okay. Let me back up a second too.
Sure.
On the book you're talking about, that thesis that's hardbound. If I were to want to get a copy from W.B. Saunders today, how would I go about getting that thing?
Well, I mean, you'd have to call them, write them, email them, whatever.
I don't think W.B. Saunders is around anymore, but can I get it on Amazon?
Yeah, you can get it on Amazon. If you get it in the box, still all wrapped up with a hardcover on it as a textbook, which was done, you'll have to pay $25,000 for it. That's what they sell.
Oh, come on.
No, I'm serious. It's $25,000.
You're kidding. $25,000?
Brand new. Yep.
Because you're going to sell me that one. You're the only one with one. I can't get them on Amazon.
Okay.
Right?
Brand new. They sell for $25,000. Now, if I have the only one left, it's going to sell for $25 million. But right now, you can get brand new ones in the box for $25.
Actually, I don't think those are brand new, because I don't think there are any brand new ones left, except probably what you have. And I keep telling everybody, I wish you had saved maybe 1,000 of them. Maybe someday you'll tell me you did. Yeah. But yeah, no, I've seen them on Amazon. I'm just teasing you, but I've seen them on Amazon up to $20,000 per copy, used. And those are used.
Yeah. Right now, commonly you can find them anywhere from $4,000 to $20,000 used. $4,000. I mean, they're beat up and dog-eared, and you got writing in the margins and stuff like that. And they're really in bad shape. Every once in a while, somebody will die, and a widow will put them on the market for $400 or $600 or $1,000, and they're not on there for 10 seconds, boom, and they're gone. But $10,000 is a common fair price for a good quality used one.
Well, I would agree with that, and I know they're in very short supply, and I know the Smithsonian Institute still recommends this book. It's a
Yes.
book, right? And it's called Diseases of Exotic Animals. I'm
Well, that's the
fortunate
animal
enough to have
version. Yeah, that's the animal version. This is the human version. The epigenetics is the.
Well, so epigenetics, you feel epigenetics has most of the information of that $25,000?
No, this is just on the humans. The disease of exotic animals contains all the stuff on 454 species.
So how much is epigenetics, the book?
I think you can get it, not including shipping. I think they sell for $25 to $30.
Not 25,000. So I can get most of the information that's
Yes. And this is
that's,
specifically on humans.
specific to humans.
Yes.
For $25. So I don't need the $25,000 version.
Yeah. Well, see, now they actually came to me. The National Institutes of Health came to me about a year ago now and said, "Okay, we want to redo your study, Wallach, and would you be interested in being involved?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I'll do it for nothing. I'll just coach you guys and whatever you need. I'll do it for nothing. I just want to get it redone." I mean, it was done in 1967 through 1977. And so, I mean, the time has passed and we need to update it. So, okay, they called me 6 months later, which was 6 months ago. And they said, "So we're sorry, we have to shelf the project." I said, "Why? Is there something wrong? What's going on?" They said, "Well, to redo the exact project you did, which cost $25 million at that time over a 10-year period, today would be more than $1 billion. And nobody wants to put up the $1 billion for the study."
No, I don't doubt it. And epigenetics is definitely the hot area of
Yes.
research and study today. Whereas before, when you made that initial discovery, people were
Well, they fired me.
too focused on
They fired me
genetics
because they said you're out of your
antibiotics,
mind.
but-
Yeah. Same way, not only did we find the cause, prevention, and cure for cystic fibrosis, working with Jerry Lewis, I found the cause, prevention, and cure of muscular dystrophy. They fired him. The Muscular Dystrophy Association fired Jerry Lewis and stopped the telethon. That's why I don't hear much about him anymore.
Yeah,
And then Milan helped me to go to Keyshawn, China, because
I remember that.
it represents 1,700 autopsies on kids under the age of 10 who died of this hypertrophic cardiomyopathy heart disease, which is the sudden heart death.
We'll come back to Keyshawn in a second. So I have a question. People submitting questions, but one I want to back up on because I think it's really important with what's going on today. So how do we increase white blood cells?
Okay, you have to give maximum protection and nutrition to your white blood cells,
Which is?
okay, and to your stem cells in your bone marrow. Your
So
bone marrow
the
is
90
really
essential nutrients cover that, but what specifically can we double up on in like today's world?
okay. Well, in today's world, you want to double up on. I would throw in. Can I name a product?
Of course.
Okay. In addition to, I would go with the biggest hammer in the toolbox. I'd go with the Healthy Brain and Heart Pack. So you're getting the selenium and you're getting all the other things in large amounts. And so I would also throw in our MSM. I'd throw in our vitamin D3. I would throw in the collagen peptides, which are collagen from fish and poultry and sheep and beef.
How does collagen affect white blood cell production?
Well, collagen is kind of like the rebar, which is what makes concrete hard and
So
lasts a long
I've
time.
heard you talk about it in terms of
Yeah.
like bone matrix.
Yeah, well, bone matrix is like the rebar of bone, and bone matrix makes up 70% of your bone weight, and then all the minerals sit in there, and the blood vessels go through there, and the bone matrix is what gives the form and shape and everything of your bone, and of course the bone marrow cavity has the stem cells in it, and they continuously make red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and antibodies. I mean, it's a continuous factory. There's things coming out the other end in your blood supply. They're being made in your bone marrow. And I've said twice here since you started interviewing me, that you have to protect those stem cells in your bone marrow. And what you're protecting them from is a lack of access to these nutrients. And so the biggest point of absorption of nutrients in the body is your small intestine. Your small intestine is where your nutrients are absorbed from. If your small intestine isn't working, you could supplement with $1 billion worth of product that's coming in your mouth, going out the toilet, your bone marrow is not getting it. So to protect your bone marrow, you have to avoid bad stuff that we know gets rid of the villi, the little finger-like projections, which maximize the surface of your small intestine. And this is why people, as they get older, they start getting diseases that kids don't get. You know, right now we're suffering from the what is it, COVID-19, the coronavirus, okay? And the coronavirus doesn't affect little kids and teenagers and 20-year-olds, and doesn't affect millennials in their 40s and 50s. It begins to affect people in their 60s, and the death rate is really skyrockets once you're past 65. The average age of death from the coronavirus is 80, and little babies don't get it, but the clinical disease, but they do get an infection, and they can infect grandma. Okay.
Right. So, but it doesn't show
A clinical disease in the baby.
Right.
It doesn't kill the baby.
You're not seeing the symptoms.
That's right. Well, here's why. They're absorbing it. Okay. They have colostrum. Okay. Which is a antibody. It's in the milk, first milk in the mother's milk of all species of vertebrates, which protect the baby. But then also, you're absorbing all these nutrients. They give your stem cells what they need to make red blood cells and white blood cells and platelets and antibodies. But as those villi die and go away because they're not getting the nutrients, suddenly now your stem cells and your bone marrow don't have what they need to maintain the cells that make the white blood cells and the stem cells and everything. And they die of natural death, and then suddenly now you're in trouble. And this is what's happening in Italy. They're the oldest of all the people in Europe when it comes to, when you look at the average age in Europe of all the different countries, they're 38 years older than Americans. Okay. And so the reason why they have the highest rate of COVID-19 death, okay, is because they cannot absorb any nutrients to maintain their bone marrow.
One, do you think that has something to do with the pasta that they maybe eat because of the
gluten?
Right. So
this is a gluten alert.
Okay.
Okay. It's the pasta. It's the spaghetti. It's the mac and cheese. It's the Italian bread that they've been eating all their life. And the uniqueness of this virus is it infects everybody of all ages.
Right. Well, I've noticed that, and I mean, you are like, the master at being observational, and you've taught me that. But that's Michelle and I were talking about this coming here today, this morning, and you're seeing people, even country to country, have dramatically different outcomes as a population, not just as an individual, to being infected with this
depends
thing.
on how much gluten you're eating, because gluten makes your villi go away. You get celiac disease. And they did a study.
I remember you talking about gluten and celiac disease back in the late 70s.
That's right.
And nobody,
50 years ago.
Yeah, people were like, come on, you're crazy.
Yeah, and I'm seeing it on the autopsy tape.
Right.
Okay. Well, in the study they did in Italy 4 years ago, they said the most common complicating side effect of chronic celiac disease in Italy was celiac disease. Celiac disease was the most chronic osteoporosis. Osteoporosis was the most common side effect of celiac disease.
But that also has an implication on blood pressure, right?
Blood pressure, also on...
Because if you're not absorbing calcium, for instance, then you're not supporting your cardiovascular system. And that's one thing I keep hearing about these people as a population in Italy is they tend to have a higher, an elevated blood pressure. And that is considered an underlying condition with what's going on right now.
Yeah. And so again, if you're eating pasta for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you're eating the breakfast of champions, which is Wheaties, right? You're eating oatmeal for breakfast. You're having mac and cheese for lunch. You're having spaghetti for dinner time.
But I like pasta. What can I do about that?
Oh, there's gluten-free pasta.
Okay, gluten-free pasta.
Cauliflower and rice flour. In fact, I had gluten-free pasta 2 nights ago. Which they use cauliflower.
And the gluten-free foods are getting pretty good now. They used to be not very good tasting. Now they're pretty good.
Yeah, and so to maximize the benefit you're going to get from supplementing with these 90 essential nutrients, to maximize absorption and keep your villi alive and healthy in your intestines, you have to avoid gluten.
Well, and is this why you like the Healthy Brain and Heart Pack? Because
It's the biggest hammer.
when you say biggest hammer, what do you, I think I know what you mean, but what does everybody else, how can you explain that to everybody?
Am I gonna go elephant hunting with a pea shooter? I mean, literally put peas in a little bean shooter and shoot them. I'd have to hit the elephant many times in the right place to kill an elephant.
So what's different about the Healthy Brain and Heart Pack? Because it really is a healthy body pack, right? But what's different about it?
Okay, what's different about it, it has more stuff in it to maximize the health of your liver, your heart, your brain, as the name implies, your bone marrow, your stem cells, including my favorite, of course, is selenium.
And what's good for your heart is good for your brain. We've always heard too, right?
Yes. What's good for your heart is good for your brain. What's good for your heart is good for your bone marrow. What's good for your heart is good for your kidneys. What's good for your heart, and really it should be called the Healthy Brain and Heart and Kidney and Pancreas and Liver Pack, but we didn't have enough room. So, but it's not just, people say, well, I have to have B12 shots all the time because my doctor says I can't absorb B12. Okay, well, there's two reasons for that. Number one, how much gluten are you eating? Because you can't absorb it through, if your villi are gone, your intestines, you can't absorb it. And then secondly,
and that's where you absorb the B vitamins, right?
That's right, your intestines. Yeah. And then secondly, how much salt are you taking? Oh, I can't have salt. My doctor says I have high blood pressure in my family. I can't have salt.
And you can't absorb.
You can't absorb B12 without stomach acid. You need stomach acid to absorb B12. Stomach acid is your best friend. You get reflux. There is no such thing as acid reflux. Well, my doctor says I have acid reflux.
Now, do you think that also is a difference between the population as the population ages versus children is the stomach acid?
Okay, the stomach acid, of course, we require at high levels for 300 years.
Well, I know as adults we're told cut back on salt. For instance,
any
children
doctor
that,
who
right?
says you should cut back on salt should be arrested and charged with what would you call it? Not negligence, because he's being proactive. Okay, they need to be arrested. And
well, you've always said you've used the term being malignant dumb.
Yeah, well, it is malignant dumb, but they need to be arrested and charged with reckless endangerment. That's what I'm looking for. Reckless endangerment when you say no salt, because when you use salt, the chief cells in your stomach make hydrochloric acid, your stomach acid, out of the sodium chloride. Okay, and when your stomach has acid in it, your pH is below 7, your acid, bacteria do not grow in your stomach and produce gas. When you're cutting back on salt, your chief cells cannot make stomach acid. Your pH in your stomach goes up above 7. Now you're an alkaline. Bacteria love that. They grow and make gas. And now you have reflux. It's not acid reflux. It's Dr. Stupid reflux.
Okay. All right. So let's back up again.
Didn't the old Bible say, the Old Testament say, God said, go forth and be the salt of the earth? If you believe in God, why would God say something?
You wouldn't lie.
You wouldn't lie.
Nope. So let's go back just a little bit and talk about colostrum.
Okay.
You had brought up colostrum and the fact that colostrum has antibodies in it. So one of the products in the new immune boosting pack bundle that we just released is Immune 911, and it has colostrum in it.
Correct.
So explain what colostrum is, explain how it has more antibodies and
well, colostrum is built by a woman's breast when she has high levels of estrogen.
But all mammals, the first milk, the baby, all vertebrates.
All vertebrates produce milk.
Okay. I'm with you.
Okay.
And so the colostrum is the first milk that the babies get.
That's correct. And of course, babies are in eggs like birds and fish and snakes and things. They get their colostrum in the egg yolk.
I did not know that. That's something I didn't know. Okay,
so they get their high antibody levels in the egg yolk.
Like sharks that are
born
eggs, it's in the yolk of the egg.
That's
so
correct.
Chickens, for instance, okay, interesting. Good to know.
I think we actually have a product, Immune 26, made from eggs.
Well, we do, right, and that's another one which has antibodies in it, which is also part of this pack. It's the I-26,
right, which is the chicken version,
which has the hyperimmune egg.
What they do is they inject bugs into chickens, and when they lay the eggs,
when you say bugs, you're talking
viruses, bacteria,
to bacteria and to
Yeah.
viruses
Yeah.
to boost the
So
antibodies.
they're boosting the antibodies. It's going into the yolk to protect
Now, that
the
makes
babies.
complete sense to me all of a sudden, is that
Oh, yeah,
that's
never too old to learn
no,
something.
I'm always learning from you. So that makes complete sense to me in terms of colostrum, because I've always known that invertebrate or not vertebrates,
All
excuse me,
vertebrates.
get colostrum by the mother's milk, and that makes total sense to me. But I had no idea in terms of. But now it makes sense from a
Egg.
chicken egg why that
Or
works.
fish
So,
egg.
interesting.
Okay.
Okay.
So these are things that people should be taking all the time, especially if you work in the public, like you work a cash register, you're a librarian.
Well, that's something that there's always a silver lining to these sort of
Mhm.
strange situations, and all of a sudden everybody has properly learned how to wash their hands.
Mhm.
Everybody now is talking about how money, changing hands can, be a what's called a vector, a source
Mhm.
of transmitting various diseases and
Yeah,
things.
for 48 to 72 hours, the virus can stay alive on a dollar bill.
And that changes hands.
Mhm.
And, if you're working, like you said, at a register or touching, money, it's touched somebody else's hands
Mhm.
probably pretty recently.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, it's definitely interesting. I've told people I consider myself a germaphobe and found microbiology in college very, very interesting. And so I've been aware of this, one, growing up with you, and two, from my college days. But now it's bringing a heightened awareness to everybody in this time. Now that's all you're hearing about. All of a sudden, it's cool to have all this information about, as you put it, bugs.
Well, the coronavirus, again, is a unique virus, but it's not new. It goes back to SARS and MERS. Those are all.
Well, there's been other
coronaviruses.
series of coronaviruses, because this is 19, right? So this is a new one.
2019.
Right, and
Okay.
so, but there were others
Mhm.
before it
Yeah.
that were kind of in the same family, I guess.
And as you pointed out earlier, I like to observe what's different about a disease. Why is it this disease kills people? And why is it doesn't kill certain people? Why does it afflict age groups and things?
Well, that's always been part of your education.
That's correct.
That was super
$25
unique.
million study.
Is comparing animals to humans. Nobody had ever done that. And I grew up. There was a show called Quincy M.E., the medical examiner, and it was Jack Klugman. And I always liked him because of that show. And it was always, they present him with, some unique, it was CSI before CSI. And so, but you've always kind of had that perspective in comparing animal situations to
Well,
humans.
that's what they were
and
paying
vice
me to
versa.
do. The $25 million study, I was supposed to find at least one vertebrate in a zoo collection that had 400, 500, 600 species that would be susceptible to the same pollution that humans were, and use them like the canary in the mine, like the old coal miner.
Right.
When the canaries would fall off the perch and die, they knew there's gases in there that get out. I mean, we're talking 300, 400 years ago, they were doing that in
Right.
coal mines. And so that was their kind of thinking. And that was Marlon Perkins from Mutual Milwaukee. He took my study where I found the first mass die-off in America from pollution. I was only 21 years old, graduate student in pathology. And I gave him a copy. I was so proud of myself, my first scientific paper when I was 21. And he and a bunch of scientists at the university level, Washington University, put together this grant application. We got $25 million. He says, okay, well, since this was your paper that got the money, you're going to be the pathologist on the project. And I was in Africa working on the White Rhino Conservation Project at the time, and he pulled me back from that.
I know. I tell everybody I was born in St. Louis because of Marlon Perkins.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things that all vertebrates will get the same nutritional deficiency diseases, whether you're a shark or a whale or a human being or a koala bear. It doesn't matter. They all get the same disease. When I came back from Africa, and I don't know if you knew this part, Perkins gave me a list of what the NIH wanted me to do. Okay, find this species of animals. And at that time, they're only doing studies on white rats, and so we want you to look at all these different species of animals. We'll freeze them in other zoos and ship them to you, or it's a big one, you may have to fly there and deal with the autopsy and everything. But here's my list. Perkins gave me his list. The first thing on the list, every bear in the world was dying in zoos from liver cancer. I don't know if you remember that story.
I've heard you tell it years ago, but yeah.
He said every bear, whether it was a polar bear, whether it was a grizzly bear, a black bear, a brown bear, a Kodiak bear, sun bear. Every bear was dying in zoos from liver cancer before they were 2 years of age. And geneticists said, well, it's just a genetic thing in bears. And since they're inbreeding in zoos, that's why it's all happening like this. Get some wild caught ones and, separate out the ones that have a bad gene. And I said, no, sir, that's not the problem. What are you feeding the bears in the zoos? Well, they're big animals, 1,000 pounds, so we can only afford to feed them if we give them like 3 loaves of bread from thrift stores. It only costs 10 cents a loaf. They'll get 5,000 calories that way, and we can give them a couple of eggs and maybe a chicken or something like that, and they get what they need. I said, do you have them stored here? Yeah, let's stop by the zoo. I mean, I hadn't even unpacked yet. They just picked me up at the plane. We're walking into the zoo, and he said, okay, so take me to the zoo hospital. I got a black light, which is really a UV light. Okay, take me to the barn where you're storing all the bread and the peanuts and whatever else you're feeding the bears. Shut out the lights. So I turned on the black light and I put on those loaves of bread that they had bought from the thrift stores. And they all glow green, like a green light at an intersection. They fluoresced green in the dark when I put the black light on. He said, what's that? And they said, well, they have aflatoxin. Aflatoxin is a poison produced by Aspergillus, a bread mold that produces liver cancer. You're feeding all these bears aflatoxin because you're giving them all the old bread with bread mold on it. And you may be saving a lot of humans because they're not getting to eat the bread. But get them all on dog food. And we put all the zoo bears all over the world on dog food. In 6 months' time, all the liver cancer stopped.
Well, I tell people that book that we were talking about earlier in this Diseases of Exotic Animals. You taught you mentored the first full-time zoo vet of the St. Louis Zoo, and that was Dr. Boaver, who stayed there for 37 years. And he was a contributor to that book with you. Yeah. I remember you writing that book because I grew up with it.
He was my student. He was my on-site student. He was a graduate student there at the St. Louis Zoo. And
well, people don't realize that zoos didn't have full-time zoo vets back then.
That's right.
That was a new thing.
That's right. I was one of the first. Yeah, I was one of the first, and of course it was because of the $25 million grant because they could afford it.
Sure. Now every zoo has a multitude of zoo vets.
That's right, depending on the size of the zoo. But back then, usually it was some local veterinarian.
Well, that's why you decided to write that book. Was an information clearinghouse of exotic animal diseases and surgical management, and because it didn't exist back then, nobody, they bring a farm vet in to work on a tiger.
Yeah.
So, anyway, okay. So you also brought up this book, Let's Play Doctor. And I think you and Dr. Milan wrote this book, and I think it was published in like 1987, 88, 89, something like that. And this is still one of my favorite books to this day. So when people ask me, this or that, whether it's nutrient or about a disease or something, I'm not a doctor. So what I do is I pull out this book and I go right to the glossary and the index. And I say, well, Dr. Wallach says, and, I read them or I type it back out and send them a little information. And so the information in this book, it's a pretty little book. I mean, it's,
well, actually, there's 2 companion books that go along with it. Let's Play Doctor.
So much information.
Let's Play Herbal Doctor and the Passport to Aromatherapy. Those 3 books.
I mean, there's 340 pages. When I say it's a little book, but it covers so much. And so, mine is so dog-eared because I use it all the time.
Yeah, but everybody who is going to supplement and they're using their brains and get rid of the bad foods on their diet, especially right now gluten, you want to get that trilogy. We call it the trilogy books. Okay, and there's myself and Dr. Milan. Okay, the trilogy books, Let's Play Doctor, Let's Play Herbal Doctor, and Passport Aromatherapy. And you have to appreciate that herbs and colloidal silver, aromatherapy oils, those things were used for thousands of years for medication, and they worked.
Sure.
And they worked. Okay. And that all changed in 1938 when penicillin came along and it was patented. And everybody wanted to make a patented pharmaceutical now instead of talking about herbs and colloidal silver and stuff like that, which have been used for thousands of years. And so, as you say, this is still my favorite. When people start with us, I like them to get a hold of the book, Dead Doctors Don't Lie, the CD and DVD, Dead Doctors Don't Lie. I like them to get a hold of the trilogy, Let's Play Doctor, Let's Play Herbal Doctor, Passport Aromatherapy. I like them to get a hold of the book Epigenetics because that goes into the details of the findings of at least 8,000 human autopsies that I've done, including 1,700 in Keyshawn province, which, by the way, was able to prove what causes crib death. Only 2% of the babies that die of crib death are in the bed with their mothers when they die. The whole thing was a lie. Okay, they actually die from hypertrophic cardiomyopathy of heart disease. And they're crying the night before they die. They can't say, "Mama, my chest hurts. Take me to the emergency room." They're only 3 months old. The mother didn't lay on them. They didn't suffocate. They died of a heart attack. And I was able to prove that when I did the 1,700.
Well, on Keyshawn, and I've read in medical textbooks about Keyshawn, Keyshawn, the province, Keyshawn disease, which is named after the province. And what is that all about? What's unique about that? And
Okay,
I borrow this book.
Sure. Well, Keyshawn disease is a deficiency of a single nutrient. It causes death by sudden heart attack, like we see in young athletes. That's what kills. The American version of Keyshawn disease would be the heart attacks that kill our young athletes. It's hypertrophic cardiomyopathy heart disease, and the same deficiency causes the pancreatic liver problems with cystic fibrosis. There's another nutrient that causes the lung issues, deficiency. And then that same deficiency causes a muscular dystrophy. And the same deficiency causes the cardiomyopathy heart attacks, which we translate in babies under the year 1 age as crib death.
Okay, so now what we're going to do, I'm going to leave everybody with a cliffhanger because we're at 45 minutes right now. This has gone by really fast. So if you're up to it and I'm just going to say if your travel schedule allows, because I mean, as busy as you are, but right now with all that's going on, I think everybody's travel schedule is probably limited. So if you're available, we'd probably like to do another one of these later this week and kind of pick up at this point. So we're going to leave a cliffhanger as to what that nutrient is. I know it's one of your favorites. And so it's super, super popular because of your research and education. So what we're going to do is wrap this up today, and we're going to we'll set a time and do this again later in the week if you're available. And we'll pick up where we left off. And because we don't want to go too long, we want Q&A and we have more to cover, obviously. And so, but just to wrap this up for today, we've introduced the immune boosting bundle pack with a special price and double QV, so through longevity, through your back office. That's available while supplies last. And what that has is it has the I-26 hyperimmune egg powder. It has the Immu 911 capsules with the colostrum. It has ultimate selenium, one of everybody's all-time favorites. It has the Himalayan goji berry juice, which boosts your immune system through antioxidants. It has a complementary formula, of course. One of our favorites, Z Radical, with the really, really unique fucoidan from the southern coast off of Australia. This pack also has colloidal silver, one of my all-time favorites, and it has the Ultimate Daily Classic in the US version, and it has Ultimate Daily in the Canadian version due to import, but very, very similar products. And so we're super excited to introduce that while supplies last, but then we're going to pick this back up and do this again later this week. Okay. So with that, we're going to wrap this up. Okay, well, thank you so much. And I'm, glad, that we were able to share information. Stay away from the gluten. Take your basic 90, the healthy body start pack, and put in as many of these secret sauces as you can for any specific disease you have. One last thing, if I make one last sentence. Absolutely.
When somebody, and people that have 6 and 8 and 10 and 12 and 20 diseases, well, my family just has terrible genes. Everybody in my family's got high blood pressure, diabetes, arthritis, thyroid problems. They have cataracts. They've got ringing in the ears. They've got, they're on kidney dialysis. They haven't urinated in 10 years. I get those all the time. They haven't urinated 10 years. They're on dialysis 6 days a week for 20 years or 10 years. And in a week, they're urinating, okay? Because you get rid of all the bad foods to maximize absorption. Okay, no gluten, no wheat, no brown rhinos to maximize absorption. You take your 90. Those people with 8 and 10 and 12 and 20 different diseases, they just cannot absorb the nutrients, and that's why they have.
Well, you've always said it's about what you absorb and what you eat, not what you don't.
That's right.
And so
what you absorb.
And so, yep, absolutely. Okay, do this again later this week.
Yep.
So thank you for your time this morning. We'll go ahead and wrap this up.
Okay, we're gonna have Q&A or
next week.
Next
or
week.
on the next one later this week.
Okay, very good.